Hello and welcome back to the Drop Step podcast. I am your host, Jack Quantra. We are well on our way into 2026. You may have listened to a dozen Trae Young to the Wizards podcasts by now. We are in the dog days of the regular season in the NBA, and it just feels like the draft is sort of going slightly under the radar. But for us true analysts out there, us real draft nerds in the space, there is always value in talking about the draft, particularly the 2026 class. So I went and found one of my favorite analysts in the space, one of my favorite up and coming podcasters as well, the host of the Double Bonus. We've got FinnDraft joining us today. Finn, how are you doing, man? Thank you so much for coming on.
I really appreciate it, man. I'm excited. I'm honored. I agree that the draft goes a bit undercovered around this time of year, but yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it with you today.
Those repeat listeners will know essentially the way the drop step works is there will be a fairly gimmicky concept to allow us to talk about some really nerdy stuff, and we are not breaking form here. So the idea today with Finn, it's an episode that I recorded with Bryce Simon last year. We are essentially playing picking fits with the 2026 draft class. What Finn and I are going to do is we're going to go through the 10 teams on Tankathon that currently have the best lottery odds, and we're going to take the top 10 players with a little bit of wiggle room from Finn's big board, and we are going to match them to their ideal spot. But the catch is you can only match one player once. So it's not like you can say Darren Peterson would be the best fit on all 10 of these teams, or, it would be the best if all 10 of these players could go and play with Jalen Johnson at Atlanta. So we're going to have to get creative. Last year, it got a bit offensive to Washington fans because I think, Bryce had Cooper Flagg going there, and I immediately sent them Derek Queen, and given sort of the losing streak that they were on at that time of year, it didn't quite look like a worthy prize for all of the struggle. So hearts will be broken, but there is no bias here. We are purely looking to find the best fits for what is an incredibly exciting roster of young talent. So we're going to start off with the ultimate one-year tank team. Not since the Spurs of, I believe, 1996 have we seen a team quite like this. The Indiana Pacers are set up for the ideal one-year tank. Hopefully Tyrese Haliburton comes back as potent as ever. And if he does so, Finn, I would love to know which member of the 2026 draft you would love to pair him up with as the Pacers try to get back up the Eastern Conference standings.
My selection here would be Cam Boozer. And this is both like a fit for the Pacers as well as Boozer. I know they have a power forward and it may seem a bit redundant, but I think with Boozer's limitations as a rim protector and as an athlete, I think that you have to pace, like you have to pace maximize in this with this type of player. And I like that they have a spacing 5 and Huff that they've been experimenting with. I know like the minutes have been kind of up and down as of recent, but I think that Boozer's offensive greatness along with like the tempo, Halliburton is obviously a factor here, like loves to play in transition. I think Duke is sort of like a transition averse team, and I've been sort of curious as to why, because I think that's how you maximize Boozer's sort of like post up heavy offense and sort of like a translation wise. Like I think it would make his NBA translation a lot clearer. And I think like the half court stuff is obviously a question, but I think like his offensive repertoire being like a high level spacer, incredible passer off of Halliburton. I think you could play him at the 5. I think you could play him at the 3, to be honest, in this sort of context, just with how fast they play. And this is probably one of my favorite fits in the draft.
I remember like minutes after game 7, Tyrese Haliburton down injured, looking at the timeline and seeing a guest of both of our podcasts, Mike Gribanov, posting, yes, it's incredibly sad that, Tyrese has done his ACL, but there is now a chance that we get to see 2 of like the highest IQ, highest feel players of the last decade sort of match up and mesh with each other. So I was very, very tempted by this fit. I'll just probe on Cam before we sort of get into where I would go with this. And just to preface this, Finn is far more clued up on the 2026 draft than I am due to location and schedule. It's quite hard to cover the draft from London, but we're in the building phases for now. I listen, I read, so it's all in good fun. Finn, in terms of like the fit in Indiana, you've already spoken about the idea of Boozer playing the 3, Boozer playing the 5, and you've already spoken about sort of a potential redundancy at the 4 with Pascal Siakam. Is this an acquisition that is just talent is talent? The fit will essentially sort itself out. You can't really stick to like cookie cutter roster building because great teams tend to be great teams and they don't always follow the same format. Or is it with a mind to Pascal Siakam is approaching his early to mid 30s. Boozer can sort of come in, play a supercharged Obi Toppin role, play minutes at the 5, and sort of get loads and loads of I suppose like versatile development minutes in the first 2 to 3 years of his career before grasping that power forward spot with 2 hands.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, honestly. Like the vision for the Pacers last year was there's no chance they're building a competent defense around this core. Like there was certainly a bit of like opponent 3-point shooting luck, like and things of that nature in the playoffs. But I think the Boozer fit in Indiana is more like allowing him to be in multiple different spots long term. I mentioned him being, like either the 3 or the 5. I think this can totally work next to Siakam. He's another player along with Haliburton who's just like a heavy transition scorer, like a high volume transition scorer, and that's like one of his biggest strengths. And like Halliburton's like not super functional in the half court as a creator. I think that's sort of like a nitpick that some people have with him, some of the Hallie skeptics. But I think that like this covers all the bases of like a spacing 5-4 combo that the Pacers have succeeded with in the past. And like as you mentioned, Siakam's getting a bit older. Could you see a move where they like try to acquire a big using Siakam's contract? Like maybe, but I think even so, like this is how the Pacers have maximized their team in the past. Just play at a super high pace, heavy on the perimeter shooting, kind of put the defense on the wayside, and I think Boozer would fit that vision to a T.
And they were sort of not first to it, but they were ahead of the curve in terms of really, really pushing the physicality element. When you look at that finals team, you've got Andrew Nemhard, you've got Aaron Neesmith, you've got like Obi Toppin coming off the bench, you've got a different kind of physicality with TJ McConnell coming in and just playing with a real intensity. And I think with the idea that in the early stages of his career, you could potentially see some Boozer at the 3 minutes. That would give you like a massive plus rebounding advantage over whoever it is that you're playing. Or Boozer at the 5 minutes, you're looking at real mobility and a lot of like 5s on a night-to-night basis, really, really struggling to keep up with that, especially in a position where maybe you can speak more to sort of like the pick and roll partners that Cam has with him. I know that he's playing with his brother this year at Duke, but pair him with Nemhard, pair him with a Haliburton, and sort of see some of those off-ball skills either emerge or re-emerge dependent on the high school career. So that could be really, really interesting. I think I was listening to you the other day, and it was with Mohammed, who's another great follow. If you're in the Twitter space, I think you're talking about like the pace that Boozer plays at in the half court. Like you said, that he's really, really fantastic transition player and pushes pace in the full court, can sort of grab and go, can launch, get out passes, like start the break from the under the basket sort of Wes Unseld style. Do you think there'd be an adjustment period maybe in ticking up that pace of play in the half court? Because that seemed to be the USP for me with the Pacers last year, just the sheer speed at which decisions were made. Like you got the Spurs playing 0.5 basketball in 2014. It almost felt like we pushed to the next zenith of that with Indiana last year.
Yeah, I think there wouldn't be any lapse in like decision making with him. He's so high feel. I mean, he's in an unheard of echelon of passers for at the big position, like one of the best all time. And you mentioned with the pick and roll partners right now, I mean, his best passer in the roster is probably like his brother, Caden, and he's played under 50% of his team's minutes. So, I mean, he's playing. Yeah, Cam's basically the de facto point guard, and I think that's what's so cool about him being like on this Pacers team is that we will never see another high paced team like this. Like this will be the vision for that sort of archetype long term. Just like, can we? Boozer obviously is limited as a rim protector as an athlete. I know people have gripes with this film overall, and I agree. Like the verticality is certainly a question, but I think the way that you maximize a player this skill set is to just, hey, we're not going to really address that. We're just going to go all in on the offense. And yeah, I think this would be easily the best offense in the league if they were to just push the pace, put the ball in Hallie's hands. Obviously, like having an outlet passer of Boozer's like level, I guess, in that department, like that, along with Hallie, like they will push the break better than any team in the league. And then having a play finisher like Pascal's level as well, like that's just going to be like one of the best fits I think I could think of in this draft.
If you were to go for like Boozer at the 5 and Pascal at the 4, then you have loads of guys that you can work into sort of size mismatches and quick duck-ins in the post as well. And like a lot of the commentary around Boozer's been how sort of advanced his footwork is, which we're really starting to see as a trend with these second generation NBA players. Like you can tell that him and Dylan Harper have just been stuck in a gym since 6 years old, and it's like Drew Hanlon's just sitting there like, yeah, why don't I give you a 20-minute run through and we'll do this? It's like they're so ahead of the game. So that could definitely be an interesting thing. Would you sort of envision long term, again, if we're talking about best fits, and we can potentially talk about some other considerations for Cam before we move on, would you go forward saying that you don't necessarily need any more offensive players with primacy on that roster? You can have Tyrese, you can have Cam, and you can sort of fill it out with switchbladey style players, again, still from like chucking darts. So like, Nemhard at the 2, Neesmith at the 3. Obviously, we're leaving out Pascal here, which is an injustice to a player that was so good last season, has been so good for so many years. But do you think long term you would build around those 2 as your offensive centerpieces and sort of surround them with defensive and athletic competency?
Yeah, I think you can kind of like, you have your spacing infrastructure in place. Like obviously you want that across the roster in an ideal situation, but I think having a player of Boozer's, I'm struggling to find a way to play it. Like Boozer probably is the best functional offensive player at the 4 that we've had in years, like bar none. Like an incredible offensive rebounder, incredible touch. Like I can't really say more than I already have in that department, but I really think that like you can kind of worry about the offense a little bit less, like have some more high-end defensive playmakers. Nemhard is obviously like a piece that in like a serious piece of that team long term. I don't think anyone doubts that, but I would almost say just like maximize all the defensive playmaking across the rest of the roster, as you're saying, with like Swiss Army knife sort of players. And yeah, I mean, you could almost argue that like they would just up the 3-point volume to like unheard of levels. Like we saw that with Boston last year. Across the roster, it was just like guys with high 3-point rates with good offensive rebounding and could block shots at their position. Boozer obviously fails at that, but like you could find other guys that sort of fit that skill set and maximize both Tyrese and Boozer long term, I think.
Do you think that, so it's sometimes like when we look at really, really great passes, it's the ESPNs of the world can just sort of go, oh yeah, these guys are top 10 passers, but loads of these players do it in completely different ways. And I almost sort of separate players into interior and exterior passers, or interior and perimeter passers. And like Jokic being the gold standard of interior passing and sort of rim assists. Do you think that Boozer, in the same way that Haliburton probably can do it all as much as any player in the league, but I think he has that real talent for the interior and also just like those connective passes as a primary, do you think Boozer slides more of a perimeter passer that's going to sort of draw the double kick out to sort of start the drive and kick action or find someone for a corner 3? Or have you been more impressed with some of the interior stuff where he's finding guys in the paint, particularly like with some of those double big lineups he's been playing with Pat and Gongba?
Yeah. I would say probably the former more than the latter, being that he's
Mhm.
more of like an exterior passer. His teams in high school were always like super high transition frequency, like
Yeah.
outlier levels of like pace and 3-point like 3-point maximizing teams. I think that like you certainly see some of the actions, like high-low actions with Pat and Malik as well. Like that is a skill of his, but I don't think he'll be producing rim assists at like quite the level as like in a day Mara, for example, produces rim assists. Like he plays out of the high post, and that's like his thing on offense is producing rim
Sure.
assists. But like I think Boozer will just produce such a high output of threes and looks in transition that I almost think that fits the Pacers better because they don't have like any dominant interior scorer, especially in the half court.
Yeah, so there'd be a sort of yin and yang on the offense. In the interest of time, in the interest of getting through 10 players as opposed to a 3-hour sort of Titanic style epic, I'm going to move us on to my player. We might circle back at the end and speak about like potential other fits for Cam Boozer. Having listened to your podcast on like the best bigs in the league, I did get enticed at the idea of Pat Ngongba coming in and filling the 5 position for Indiana long term. I think that most fans may be a little bit disappointed to hear that, given that they're at the top of the lottery standings, and that would probably involve at least dropping to 4, let's say, if not 5. The whole sort of it was the Utah style drop last year. But I just look at the success that Indy had with Miles Turner at the 5 and how we do still feel like we're in the gold rush of the spacing 5. Everyone's rushing to get one, yet we're still finding the efficient way to find one. Like it's not an archetype that is readily available. And I'm not saying that Pat is Karl Anthony Towns or anything, but when you talk about sort of a high feel big that can potentially long term function in a ton of different spaces on the court, whether you're asking him to play in the dunker, whether you're asking him to operate in Spain pick and roll with Tyrese, with anyone directly, with like opposite corner action, running pin downs for player like Iverson cuts. I think that he could be a player that really thrives with the utility and basically like Rick Carlisle going, hey, I've got this super versatile guy. How many different actions can I make him learn? Let's really put him in almost the offensive blender while also being someone that has really flashed in terms of like the rim protection. I think Duke have been a much better rim protecting team with Pat on the floor this year, and that has been a slight knock on Cam. And it's quite nice that we've spoken about them. We didn't share our lists fully prior to the pod, so it's nice to sort of go through this live. What would you think about Pat as a pacer, and how close did you get to having him landing in Indiana, or do you think there are a few other spots that might suit him better?
Yeah. I think it's important to mention, like you said last year, people were upset at the Derek Queen selection. Like this is best fits for the player and the team. So like this was definitely one I thought of. I'm higher on Ngongba than most. I think I faded him a bit since the last iteration of my board that I sent you, but I think specifically for Ngongba, the reasons that you fade him are sort of like a sampling issue. Like teams don't
Okay.
really play out of the high post that much. And so like if you're very low on Ngongba, it's that you don't exactly know what the offense will look like in the league if he has to scale into like a roller or finisher. And, obviously I don't care as much because he's scoring 80% at the rim, but like, I think of all the teams for the offense to like really work on the high end, the Pacers are the best one. I mean, you mentioned like running a high volume of pin downs and sort of like getting creative off the ball is what they're best at. Like they play Tyrese out of all these delays, especially in the playoffs. Like, where they'd have 2 wings at the top, like either left or right, and then they have him like sort of come down the middle and fill, and then Tyrese will either swing to the corner or just get a wide open drive. Like Tyrese is not like a high level advantage creator in these settings, but like just the passing threat alone and the spacing infrastructure that you get with a center like Miles Turner, you can do that with Ngongba. He will shoot, like I have no question. The free throw percentage has fallen off just a bit. But like what we have with the pre-NCAA as well as like a sample last year, albeit very small, is like he will probably shoot. Like he is incredible touch on layups in the short mid range. Like free throws, like kind of tapered off, but he had a finger injury, I believe, the past month. So given the benefit of the doubt on that end, and yeah, I mean him playing out of the high post in a context like this would just you'd reap all the benefits of the offense, and then um, I think as we mentioned with Cam, like tempo making up for some of the weaknesses. And Ngogba's
Mhm.
not like the best rebounder. Like in fact, he's probably a pretty poor defensive rebounder at his position. But the Pacers also, that's not what made them good last year. It was
Yeah,
the
sure.
other side of the court, like crashing the glass with their wings. And Aaron Nesmith is a good offensive rebounder. Pascal, same thing. Like they worry more about crashing the glass offensively than defensively. And they rely on opponent 3-point shooting to like save them on the defensive end. And Ngongba, as you mentioned, I think the defense is totally underrated. So I totally agree. This is a great fit.
I also think like Miles Turner last year was asked to do so much stuff that bigs aren't usually asked to do, particularly non-superstar bigs, where often it's almost like an all or nothing with a big rolling these days. It's either roll with intent to get to the rim, catch under the basket, or pop all the way out to three. And Miles was very often like setting a pick and roll to then catch around the free throw line. And it's the kind of thing that you run for like Joel Embiid, but in that spacing environment, in that tempo where the advantage is sort of coming with the pass. I think that Ngomba is probably one of the players, not just like in the draft space, but also available on the market that could keep that element of Indiana going. Like I see them linked to Daniel Gafford once a month, once every 2 months, and think, oh, don't get Daniel Gafford. Like, yeah, great player, good rim protector, super athletic. You can see an element of the game, but it's not. You would be losing some of like that secret sauce that made Indiana so fun last year. So yeah, two good fits there. We've got Indiana in Finn's world taking Cam Boozer. I wonder what Indiana fans will be happier about here. And in my world taking Pat and Gongba, but we will see. Derek Queen has turned out to be one hell of a pick thus far for the New Orleans Pelicans. Not saying I called it or anything, but go back, listen to that iteration of the drop step. Finn, we are 22 minutes in. We are going to fly straight to Atlanta. Probably like the spiciest scenario here. Where did you go with Atlanta?
I know we said we wouldn't pick him for every team, but I am going to pick Darren Peterson for this one.
Let let's save the trade. I've also gone with Darren Peterson here. This is the absolute hand in glove fit. Talk to me about Darren. He's probably the player that I've seen ignite the should we get rid of the one and done rule most in like my 5 years of following the draft. It seems to have emerged over the past couple of days. Everyone's saying, all right, he's putting up 30 and a half and is kind of like not struggling to do it. Why is it that he's having to spend this year in college? Talking about a team that's just traded their primary playmaker of the last 7 or so years. Tell me why Darren Peterson would be a good fit on the Hawks.
I am curious as to why everyone was so quick to say that the Hawks will be better without Trae Young, to be honest. Um, as you mentioned, like this is their primary, and their offense has been more successful with him on than off the court for years. And I don't want to validate like a 40 game sample of on off data that says the contrary. Like he's obviously not the greatest defensive player, but you also acquired CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, who are, you can think what you think of them offensively, but defensively it's almost worse now that you have to insulate two bad defensive players.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, with Darren,
Just on that very quickly, the Hawks with Trae Young on this year, 121 offensive rating, with Trae Young off 114 offensive rating. So even in this, like the Hawks are cooked, Trae's cooked stage of his tenure, you're still seeing like a +7 bump. We will not talk about the defense. We'll move straight on from there. But Finn, let's go straight to Darren. Go for it, man.
yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like they're going to be a better offensive team with Trae Young. Honestly, the thing with Darren and what I struggle with for the Hawks is that you kind of want like a high end playmaker here, like a passer. Darren's sitting at around like a neutral assist to turnover ratio. And I think he's a better passer than that just based on what I've watched. And, he's obviously super young, so we want to give him time to expand his game. But I think that with Darren, you're kind of looking at this yin and yang where Jalen is also another guy like Halliburton, like Siakam, that are most successful in transition. The half court vision is not that they're like high end advantage creators who touch the paint every possession and just get to any spot on the floor. That isn't what Jalen does. Another great follow, D. Lee, has demonstrated through his film studies that I love to watch. They're incredible. His handle in the half court is not super high level, and honestly, it's just because he's a taller player. Like, what do you expect from him? Darren this year has struggled from a hamstring injury, and he's still been one of the most impressive offensive prospects that I've evaluated. Like, just like such a high volume of dribble jumpers, and everything goes in. And he had like 23 points and a half the other day. You can't really ask too much in the playmaking front if he's just one of the best high volume shot creators off the dribble we've ever seen. By no means leaving any defense on the table either. Like, outlier high block and steal rates. Steal rates not yet, but in high school they were very, very high. And obviously, like, was a better offensive rebounder in high school than he is now. Like, some of the athleticism stuff, I think, is just a bit fugazi. He's had an injury. Like, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt with that. And like, I mean, just having an offensive creator off the dribble like this, even if he's like somewhat of a subpar passer, this is the best fit in the draft for Atlanta. And I think if this happens, like, a Nikhil Darren backcourt can definitely work. And honestly, giving him the opportunity to like make plays on the ball early, like, it could be really beneficial for him long term.
Yeah. And this is the one where like it's really, really difficult to avoid hyperbole, because usually you would look at the player of this caliber and go, oh my God, they're going to have to go and like advantage create with that guy. Whereas you look at Atlanta and it's all there, give Darren Peterson even like Corey Kispert standing in the corner, Corey Kispert occupying the weak side, just running off a pin down, Kristaps Porzingis spacing to 30 feet in the 20 games that he's healthy all year, or even like Onyeka Okongwu, whose shot has really come on. We'll leave Dyson Daniels out of it for now, but it's just a scenario where I'm super high on Jalen. I get all the stuff you say about him really being like a transition machine, but I also think that Jalen is it's not quite Haliburton-y, but when you look at like his touches over the course of last year and this year with Trey out, he's right up there with the Jokic's, the Sabonises. So he can do sort of the 9-to-5 passes, just the passes to keep your team in sequence, keep your team in flow in the half court. And he's not one of these players that once he gets the ball, the outcome of the possession is decided. It's not always going to be a Jalen Johnson drive or a Jalen Johnson kick out for a corner three. He is happy to play in flow, so I think that those two could be really fun. I'm trying to think of like scenarios for players to come in, like these high level players to come in, and nothing pops like this Atlanta team potentially could. I'm avoiding it, but if the greatest mind of basketball in the 21st century is calling Jalen Johnson Scottie Pippen on the Mind the Game podcast, I can go out there and I can draw the Jordan and Scotty comparisons if you've got Jalen and Darren Peterson. Is that the kind of archetype that we're looking at with Darren? Because I know there was a lot of like best guard prospects since Kobe, best guard prospect since, for some reason Luka got left out of all of that. But are we looking more at the ice cold killer shooting guard, like you said, loads of off the dribble jumpers, the kind of thing that Shea has really sort of brought back into fashion in the last couple of years? Is that what Darren Peterson is all about?
I think there is a case for that to be made. I think Shea, from all of like the redrafts we've done and all of like the the studies we've done on like possession economy stuff, Shea is just an outlier level prospect, like nearly a 2-to-1 assist to turnover against the best teams in the country at like a pretty flawed Kentucky team for their standards. He's just an outlier. Darren, I don't think, is even the same level of passing prospect as a Shea. I think that's definitely a weakness. I mean, in this last game, you saw like a multitude of pick and roll reps where he was just like kind of missing in the margins. Like he made some good
Sure.
reads, obviously off the dribble, but he had one in particular. He had an opportunity to split the double, and he would have created a wide open advantage for his team, and it just went off the foot of the other team. And that's obviously like nitpicking, but that's what we do with the best prospects in the world.
Very
And
tough.
like, yeah, and I think like of any of the prospects that I've watched, like if he is at like a 2-to-1 assist to turnover at the end of the year, this will be the number one pick, like pretty convincingly. But for me,
Yeah.
but I don't think as of now, and based off the priors, I can project him being like a high level point guard prospect. I think he's certainly a 2 more than a 1.
And it's weird, like we're sort of seeing again. I don't want to make this the Trae Young trade episode or anything, but the value of the small heliocentric guard is really shifting in real time this year. And I do feel like over the next couple of years, your traditional elite guard prospect might get faded in a way that they haven't been over the course of the 2010s. Like if you look at the history of number one picks through the 90s and the 2000s, you had to select a big, and then 2008 rolls round and it kicks off a slate of these elite like athletic guard prospects being picked, your Derrick Roses, your John Walls, for example. And then you get your helio players that you can build an offense around, and that's what you've had to go for in the past 5, 6, 7 years in the NBA. And it does feel like we're maybe on the corner of that shifting. But I think that Darren, given his size, given some of his like off-ball ability as well, there've been a couple of cuts that have made the highlight reels in recent weeks on Twitter. Like his ability to play on and off the ball, and while you're talking about it as a potential weakness, Finn, like the fact that he's not necessarily going to be slated as a point guard, that you might have this like second generation of hyper efficient shooting guard start to emerge in the league, as opposed to these give me the ball for 100 pick and roll possessions per game. It's really fun, and it does feel like he's coming at the right time. And it would just be such a fun scenario arriving to that Hawks team who would maintain cap flexibility, who have a lot of exciting young talent around him. I've waxed lyrical about Mo Gay on this podcast, so we get to Darren Peterson. We're talking in like really high echelons here. Have you got anything more to say on Darren before we move on to Sacramento?
No, honestly, and I think the one thing I'd probably add is this Kansas team is such a bad context for a point guard. I just want to make that very clear. Like I could understand being higher in the passing because of the infrastructure here.
Yeah, this Kansas team is a bad context for a point guard, and he is shooting 50, 43, 82, putting up a 32.4 PER, 22.5 points per game. Something tells me he's going to be okay in the NBA. Unfortunately, in our exercise, it is not the team that probably needs him most, the Sacramento Kings getting him. Finn, who did you have go into the Kings as the team that is slated third in the lottery right now?
This one was so tough because I don't know. Like me personally, I'd probably just take the best player available. But I think the best prospect on the board, kind of like with this current roster construction, that could get really bad. I think that player being AJ Devanza. I'm gonna go with Caleb Wilson here, and my reasoning for that is that it's twofold. One, I think that I think I'm a little bit more worried than consensus on his offense. I think his unassisted percentages are a little bit more akin to like a center more than a 4. Obviously, some of the self-creation pops on tape and he does it better than some of the players at his position. But to be honest, like I think the unassisted percentages are a bit concerning. That along with like against good teams, his rim field goal percentage is dropping off a bit. It just tells me that like this is not an incredibly high level creator. And for the Kings, I mean, he fits the profile of like a defensively slanted wing next to Sabonis, who can guard, 3 through, whatever like they need him to. The offensive rebounding is incredible. This team would crash the hell out of the glass. And he's certainly a high level playmaker off the ball. I And then I think Sabonis being at the 5 would help insulate Caleb's offense to a degree. And as much as Sabonis like leaves something to be desired defensively, he is a stopgap to a degree because of his weight,
Yeah, yeah.
and he can stick onto a center matchup like pretty reasonably. And I think that's the one thing that Caleb might struggle with in the league. Like he's only 220 pounds, and for a big, like that's just subpar to be fair. And I think that like this fit both for Caleb and for the Kings, like it covers up two of their greatest weaknesses. My issue with that is that like who the heck is going to be on the roster next year is still a bit up in the air. Like I don't even know if Sabonis is that much of a thing to factor in because will he even be on the team?
Mhm. But I think you can operate from a position of factory reset. And I started this entire exercise with putting Caleb Wilson. For me, he was going to Charlotte, and that was my first fit that I thought of. Pair Brandon Miller, Conknipple, and Lamelo Ball with a outlier athletic four who can really sort of like bridge the gap in terms of rebounding and on defense and eat in transition as much as he pleases with all of that shooting talent. And I just felt too bad for Sacramento. I was like, I've just looked at this now. Finn, would you care to guess when the last time, and obviously this is subject to opinion, when's the last time Sacramento had a properly, defensive stalwart at the wing?
Oh man.
I'm discounting
You can,
Keegan Murray because I feel like he's been asked to do so much, and he's been asked to rebound, to space, to be everything, to be like sort of three wings in one. So pre Keegan Murray, would you like to hazard a guess, or do you want me to spoil it?
I'll go 5 years. I was
I
conservative.
I will take you back to the 2007-2008 NBA season when 28-year-old Ron Artest, maybe known as Meta World Peace at that point, played his last season in Sacramento. I looked through the entire roster, unless you're counting Rudy Gay. I'm certainly not counting Rudy Gay during the DeMarcus Cousins years. All you had was point guards during the De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Haliburton sort of era in Sacramento. It has been nearly 20 years since the Kings have had a defensive plus wing and sort of like a starting level defensive plus wing. So even though you're absolutely right, this team is almost like a blank canvas in terms of where they are. They've got some fun young guys in, like Maxime Reynaud has started to pop. Keon Ellis is probably not going to be on the team next. Neat Clifford had an incredible summer league and it is a player that has a lot of fans around the space and hopefully around the league as well. But I would just start off my rebuild righting the wrongs of the last one. This team has been built around high volume shot takers, some of which very efficient. I'm a huge Zach LaVine fan. We'll park that for now, but like they just haven't been able to keep up with the requisite level of athleticism. They haven't been able to insulate Sabonis at the 5. All of their sort of defensive scrappiness has come at the point guard position, and then they've kind of refused to play those point guards as well. So I would just start my rebuild saying, Keegan Murray's probably going to be here for the next few years. We'll pay him a nice contract. We'll get Caleb Wilson in. Them as a 3-4 combo are a thoroughly modern wing duo that you can start your rebuild with. And I think that, let's say they don't land in the top 3, that is an infrastructure that can allow for a ton of different players to be picked in 27, in 28, in 29. You're not sort of taking optionality away. You're going to allow for Caleb to get some on-ball reps, or at least like some creation reps in his first season if you're not picking like a high-level perimeter player, or if they don't re-sign Russell Westbrook. And I think he's one of like the sneaky ceiling players. You speak about offensive concerns, but as a pure like NBA mixtape guy, this guy pops, and he statistically pops as well, at least from like the box score stats. So I really liked Caleb's fit there. Nearly 20 and 10 from the wing position this year, almost 3 assists per game. Just an incredibly exciting player, and one that's come slightly out of left field, one that could finally make the Kings a decent defense again in the long term. So I was quite excited about that, even if it was a last minute switch on my account.
Yeah, I think he's a super high level prospect. I think regardless of how I feel about the offense, like this is impact man. I've said that on Twitter a multitude of times. Just like such a high
Yeah.
level offensive rebounder, players that have like that meet like super high defensive thresholds, crash the glass and make plays and have even a semblance of functional offense as Caleb does. Like they just tend to peak as like top 5 impact in any given draft that they're in. So this felt kind of free in my head.
I just think like the run and dunk element as well
Yeah.
does allow you to play next to like a Sabonis style player in a way that like maybe would be even funkier with like Colin Murray Boyles from last year's draft.
Yeah.
Like they're two different like styles of creator, and I think that Caleb could sort of fit in an ultra low usage or a very very high heavy transition load. So I think he would be super fun. Finn, who've you got going to the Wizards? Who've you got joining Trey in DC?
This one also changed after the trade yesterday because
Nice. Okay.
I just would have been like, go with AJ here. The defense is
Mhm.
gonna be they're just gonna reshape it around him. You can't really do that with Trae Young, unfortunately. And like same thing with Atlanta, like the players that they're swapping in or out, like before it wasn't a long-term project, and now it is because Trey's gonna be there in the long run. So um I went a bit outside of the box for this one,
Mhm.
and this is a player I've been taking more seriously in, like, the last couple of days. Um, can I interest you in a Yaxel Lindeberg selection?
Oh, I would love to hear. Poor Wizards fans, 2 years in a row being slighted by the Pick and Fits edition of the Drop Step podcast. Yeah. Sell me Yaxel. I'm sure that I'm going to make a similar argument with my guy. This is where I ended up putting Cam Boozer. So we'll come to Cam in a second. But seeing as we spent so long talking about him, talk to me about Yaxel.
So, like, the thing with the Wizards is that they need good players. Like, as high or low as you are on their young core, like, the product they're putting out on the floor, like, they've been winning the past couple of years, but just, like, the long-standing lack of winning is just, like, a big issue.
Mhm.
And I guess just this kind of fits in with the Axel argument for people being like, "Oh my gosh, this is a high level, like, prospect." I would kinda disagree to to a point. I think like, I'm very, like, stats heavy in my evaluation.
Sure.
I'll admit it. I'm certainly integrate film, but, like, this is objectively a play finisher right now when you watch Michigan. I think he's even sub 20 usage, so it shows up on the spreadsheets as well, but, um, last year, this was a high volume creator, like, super high volume of post ups. Again, another guy that was, like, operating in the midst of nail help and, like, had multiple defenders on him, especially against good teams. Like, this was not a high level 2-point scorer, but I think a lot of it had to do with just the volume of looks he was getting against, like, very,
Mhm.
very good teams. His team wasn't great. They didn't play much competition, but when they did play comp, he was the only issue, to be fair. So, I think as for the, he lacks upside argument, um, I think when people say, like, there haven't been that many good 23-year-olds, that were drafted, I think the argument is almost also like it's like a sampling thing. The reason that there haven't been
Yes.
that
Yeah.
many good 23-year-olds isn't because there aren't good 23-year-old prospects. I mean, look at Kalkbrenner right now. Like, we have a
Mhm.
sample of, like DeLon Wright was, like, a top 50 player according to, like, RAPM for, like, multiple years in a row. And, like, however you feel about those metrics, DeLon Wright was an incredible, like, player and had, like, an impact on winning when he played. And Yaxel's a better profile than both Kalkbrenner and DeLon Wright, like, leaps and bounds ahead. I mean, no one could have projected this leap as a shooter he's had this year. He started basketball late. I don't know how I feel about that as, like a data point moving forward, but,
But
like,
for a lot of guys, that's the skeleton key, isn't it?
yeah.
Oh my God, he's going to be an all-star. He started playing basketball at 15 instead of 10. But no, carry on. It's good that we're not doing the sort of Steph Curry with the 40-inch vertical style analysis here just yet.
Yeah, like, I don't even think that needs to be a data point because the exponential leap in his offense has been right there. Like, he doubled his 3-point volume. The 2-point percentage is obviously, like, a product of Dusty May is, like, one of the best 2-point coaches ever. That's an idea I've been bouncing off other people like Danny Wolf last year. Um, when he played at Yale, he was like one of the most destructive 2-point scorers you've ever seen at that height. And then when he goes to play at Michigan, he's like clearly just solid right in that department.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like Yaxel isn't going to shoot 80% from the rim and like whatever, but his play type evolution, like he's playing so much more at a transition frequency was super high last year. Not creating as much, but like the ancillary stuff pops off the screen. And then we do have some, some stock in like the playmaking and handling vision as well. He's also huge. Like a lot of those names in the age 23 list are like smaller point guards, like smaller centers. Yaxel's
Yep.
6'9", 240 with a 7'4" wingspan. Like you don't really have to worry about that with him. And
Yes. Yep.
I just struggle to find weaknesses in his profile, to be honest. Other than like a small, like a substantial comp drop in his efficiency last year, which had to do with usage mostly. I mean, this year he's been undoubtedly the best college profile in the country. Like he has been better than anyone in the draft, and that's because he's super old, but also because this is probably the most complete profile of any prospect that I've scouted. Like just bar none. He's an incredible defensive player, has grown the offense, has a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which is a good mark for guards, but this is a 6'9" beast. Like I think there's plenty of upside to be had. And for the Wizards, this is quite literally the best player right now that they could get.
I think the thing is, like, you should start being concerned about long-term development when the development starts to stagnate. If you look at Yaxel's profile and you look at like the change in shot profile, last year he was taking 2 threes a game, 10.4 2-point attempts per game. That is now a solid 4.5 to 4.4 split. That is not something that you see particularly often in a profile. His free throw percentage has jumped to 85% on the year. Obviously, still small sample size at this rate, but there is still clear development. And I think that when you're talking about a team that has bet on just getting a primary, maybe, we'll see what Trey sort of unfolds with. It can always just be useful to have someone that can sort of modulate their usage up and modulate it down. And with a player like Yaxel, you want to get to a stage where if you're in a high intensity setting, if you're in the final or semi-final of the NBA Cup, if you're in a playoff series, you want to make sure that he's a player that cannot be left alone, whether that is like, he's hung off from the corner or whether you don't have to respect his like ability to attack a closeout. I think that he's proving that both of those things are not necessarily going to be tenable at the NBA level. Then you throw in all the other traits that you've spoken about, the auxiliary passing, the ability to attack the glass, the ability to just find efficiency in so not like few touches, but like in a fairly like egalitarian system where it's not what he was playing with at UAB last year. I think it's interesting. I think there is still upside on the board, and one of the things that I think Washington has done over the last few years is pick 2s and 3s quite knowingly. Like they haven't really shot at finding a 1. They haven't reached for a 1 when they haven't thought that he was there. Like Alex Sarr at the top of the draft, in your heart of hearts, he's not going to be your offensive number 1. Something tells me they didn't think Keyshawn George was going to be picking up loads of pick and roll reps, even if that's what he's done in the NBA this year. So it would be interesting to see them carry that on, and particularly in an era where we keep seeing, hey, these deep teams that can play an 82-game season, that can attack you off the bench. If you can build just a really, really solid stable of strong NBA players, that's going to get you a certain way, and then you have picks left over to try and maybe upgrade the Trey slot or to wait to see what like Trey Johnson can turn into. So it's a really, really interesting pick. I don't know if it's one that all Washington fans would be happy with, particularly this sort of maybe being the last year of their tank. But I completely get the thinking. You'll be annoyed when you hear where I have Yaxel, because if he ends up there, it's just like, oh crap, he can't end up there. But this was my Cam Boozer spot. It was my Cam Boozer spot before the Trey Young trade. It's my Cam Boozer spot still after the Trey Young trade. I'm a little bit obsessed with the getting 2 unicorns together in the front court. I want to see the first team to do that. And while Cam Boozer and Alex Sarr aren't the height of Unicorn in the way that it's 7 foot, takes threes, can attack off the dribble. They do it in slightly different ways. I would still really, really like to see that front court. And in the same way that I thought Queen would have been really insulated in Washington next to Sarr, I think you can make the exact same argument about Boozer. I think he could function as a real interior presence if Alex continues to space to the 5. It's not necessarily something we spoke about too much with Indiana, although you did mention Jay Huff. And then you are just throwing a ton of size around Trey if you're playing, Keyshawn at the 3, Cam Boozer at the 4, Alex Sarr at the 5, and then you've got dealer's choice, on a night-to-night basis. Are we going to try Bilal out there for 20 minutes? Are we going to throw Trey Johnson out there? It's sort of like a styles make fights thing. So I have Cam Boozer there just because I would like them to get a number one option, and I would rather they have the sort of happy accident of, hey, we traded for a primary, now we've got another primary. Oh well, we've just got a load of offensive creation on our team. That tends to work. So that was my Boozer spot. Have you got anything to add on either Boozer in Washington or any more Yaxel before we get moved on to, I believe, the Hornets?
Yeah, I think that the Trey Boozer fits like super ideal. Like Trey of all of the PGs, like it's fallen off a bit this year. He's had Achilles soreness for like a year, which is both like scary and you could swing a bit more optimistic with it. Like if anyone is going to maximize Sarr's 2-point scoring, it's going to be Trey. And then in the half court, like this is just a wizard. Huh? But yeah, like the Trey, I think would maximize Boozer's like mid post touches. I think he'd actualize a lot of like Boozer's seals off the ball. Like I think this is like a perfect fit, to be honest. I think that's a perfectly reasonable selection.
Is there a reason why you prefer Cam in Indiana to Washington? Just as a quick 30 seconds. What's the point guard fit thing, maybe?
I think Indiana's defense is salvageable, and I don't think Washington's will be in a Trey Young. Like the best NBA defenses are now, especially they're built off of like turnover creation, and like not only is Trey not able to do that, he's also super small. And then Keyshawn, to his credit's like bigger, like does get some blocks, but just like on the steals front, like. And Boozer will help this because he's a great steals guy. But like, I don't know if I trust the defensive infrastructure as much as I do Indiana's, even if I think Indiana's is still like pretty like poor. I think you can just salvage some positive defensive units. And I mean, they did it in the playoffs. They just kind of had this like contesting devil magic where Aaron Nesmith is like an incredible perimeter defender. Siakam is obviously super apt as a perimeter defender as well. Washington's nice because you're not asking Boozer to be like a rim protector. They have Sarr, who is just one of the best paint protectors in the NBA, but like those wing units are super troubling defensively, I think. And like Bilal, and like I don't want to be like pessimistic, but like he is an overrated defender, we'll say. He's not like the best turnover creator, like definitely better at the point of attack, but he isn't like super outlier high weight. Which kind of just leaves him, stuck in some spots. So I don't know. It's just it's a confusing defensive infrastructure, we'll say.
Fair enough. I think that makes sense. We'll go to number 5, and this is where fans will now start to get really annoyed at me. I said it with Indiana. This is definitely a team that is in the last year of their tank, unless they can negotiate something with Houston in the next couple of months, in the same way that they did, I would say, about 12 months ago. So Brooklyn are number 5 in the odds. It's the Nets, and yes, we still have AJ DeBancer on the board, but he is not going there, not for me at least. This was my Kingston Fleming's fit, and it's really a exercise in giving a player with that offensive versatility to Jordi Fernandez, and saying, in the same way that he has with Michael Porter Jr., in the same way that he did with, Cam Johnson as well, obviously a completely different style of player, let him cook. Go out there, go and create an infrastructure that can allow this guy to thrive. And, I'll come on to why AJ hasn't quite got there as we move through the pod. But I do think that Fleming's like is being raved about in the online spaces at the moment, has a ton of skill at getting to his spots, at operating from absolutely any area on the court. And if you were to pair him long term with Michael Porter Jr., if he were to stay there, that could be interesting because MPJ gives you that 3-point volume. Or the other reason why I really like this is like Jaeger is starting to pop a little bit. And if you have that balance of Jaeger to set the table, Jaeger to, not like run your half court offense, but ensure that there's a sufficient level of passing, you can insulate a real like bucket getter assassin in Fleming's next to him in the backcourt. So that's where I had, that's rather who I had Brooklyn picking at 5.
Yeah, I also had Fleming's here, honestly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is another like good team fit, good prospect fit. Like Fleming is the one thing that he sort of lacks is like a foul drawing 3-point rate thing that I've written about a couple of times. I think I've posted a couple of queries as well with this. Like just kind of a not ideal shot profile just yet of all the things to like nitpick him for. That's probably it. Like there's some NBA players that really succeed off of this, but it tends to just be like super outliers. Drew Holiday is one, but like Fleming's is, not as big. He's still 175 pounds. There's a chance that he gained a ton of weight, but like, I think Drew succeeded defensively. I wouldn't say he's like a super high level offensive player, even now. And then, Tyrese Maxey was another one, but he's always been like super amazing touch. Fleming's rather is like still questionable, I'd say. Like everything's going in, so I don't want to be like, oh, he's a bad shooter. He's not a bad shooter. He's a great shooter, but like,
Yeah.
kind of leans back on his jumper, and just some of the percentages are a bit sus. He's still shooting like sub 80% from the line, I'm pretty sure, now, or like he's like pretty close to that. So,
do you think he's a player that might like slip down your board a little bit as time goes on if these percentages start to come back down to earth?
I factored that in. I think
Yeah.
I think the free throw shooting is about where I expected it to be, and that's like kind of all encompassing as a shooting indicator. So I'm just gonna roll with that. If he starts shooting a bit worse at the rim, I could see it, but it has to be pretty substantial. And honestly, he's just been so athletic and like so dominant this early part of like even conference play that like I'm not that worried about it. If that slips, like we'll certainly have some conversations, but with the fit with Brooklyn, I don't have to worry about the shot diet at all. Jordy has gotten the most out of Jaeger. He's like, all right, we're just gonna have you shoot a ton of threes. We're not gonna have you worry about like the advantage creation, like getting to the rim at a high level. Like he's essentially like a really high level passing wing, I think. And
yes, yeah.
Offensively, I don't have to worry about the shot diet with Flemings because I know he's going to shoot more threes. And if Flemings was shooting more threes, I'd be like top 5 happy with him. Right now, it's just like a bit kind of falling behind a little bit because if he gets drafted to a team like Washington, he might be overtaxed offensively as a creator because you're the second fiddle to Trey. And then, they haven't historically had that 3-point volume increase from their players. So like if he's with Jordy, I just have all of the assurances in the world that he's going to shoot more threes. And then also Brooklyn plays extremely like aggressive on defense. And Flemings is an incredible defensive player, just like at the top of the country in steal rates, super athletic for a guard, as I mentioned previously. And like, this feels like the ideal fit for him. Jordy is a genius. And of all of the coaches to get the most out of like a sort of a flawed offensive player who could have like really high level upside as like a paint touch guy with like super high level ancillary skills, like it's him. Like Jordy will do that.
Yeah. And like if this is the pit that's made, Cam Thomas, get your agent on the phone, buddy. Something tells me you might not be re-signing in Brooklyn anytime soon. But yeah, he's sort of like hit some of the other thresholds that you've spoken about, like a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. You've spoken about the steal percentages as well. And with these players, like I do think that Brooklyn does need to take a swing, and it is quite funny having drafted Ben Seraph, Nolan Traore, that we've still got them taking another perimeter player here. But if you don't hit it, keep rolling the dice. And like you said, Jaeger is profiling a little bit more like a plus passing wing. Shout out to Ahmed Jama, who is now hosting a podcast, or who's now like guesting on a podcast with David Lee, who you mentioned earlier, and he compared Jaeger very early on last year to Joe Ingles. So like that's a nice like long-term fit, long-term outcome. I do think that Flemings is like simultaneously someone that can be maximized, that could come in and potentially like help this team from the get-go, despite some of the size concerns, while maintaining some of that upside as well. And if the percentages sustain, gonna keep rocketing up that board, baby. But we are now at Charlotte. Charlotte, like one of the more fun teams to do this for, just because they've got such fun talent on the roster right now. They're coming off the back of a really good draft. Finn, who did you have going to the Hornets?
This was another one where I just like kind of lost, to be fair.
Right. Okay.
I went Jaden Quaintance for this.
Same here. Yep.
Awesome. This is another one where the fans will probably be like, "Oh my god, you picked like a sub 50% free throw shooter for my team. Why'd you do that?" JQ is like one of the best defensive prospects you'll find. And if any player is going to be able to force a functional defense out of Concanupple and LaMelo Ball, it's JQ, like 100%. There's been some weird on-off data with Kalkbrenner so far, even if I think he's been super good. I think part of it is that Moussa Diabate is also really good. So like, why are you drafting another big? I think the NBA is sort of moving towards these like three-pronged units of bigs. This was a idea mentioned to me by At the Level on Twitter as well, another good follow. You're going to have 48 minutes of incredible center play, and he has like he's a dominant offensive rebounder. He's still 18 years old, and he's played 2 years in college basketball. In both years, he will be this year and was last year one of the best defensive players in college basketball. And I want to keep emphasizing that because that is the vision. Like, you can scam a neutral offensive player out of just like good offensive rebounding and like requisite playmaking value. And he offers that. He's like pretty high feel for his position. But not only are you getting like a neutral offensively, you're also getting like the best defensive player in the draft, bar none. Like, this is a rumored 6'11" player with a 7'5" wingspan. He's also 250 pounds. Like, he will continue to grow. He'll continue to lean out. And yeah, like this is the center of the future in Charlotte, in all likelihood, if Kalkbrenner doesn't work on the defensive end.
It's not even that. Like you said, if any player can force a competent defense out of that backcourt, it's Jaden Quaintance. But if any trio can make JQ more than playable, for in high leverage situations, it's going to be what I will call, like, unashamedly now, this trio will be the highest volume 3-point shooting trio of all time for the next like 3 to 5 years, because last year Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball overtook Clay and Steph as the duo that took the most threes per game. And then you've added Con to that group as well. It's insane. Like, yeah, maybe like the Celtics with, I suppose, like Tatum, Pritchard, White, and Simons maybe could have something to say about that. But the real key point that I want to talk to you about here, and this is the fun in having someone on that like lives and bleeds the draft. I think the absolute key to this working is JQ in the short roll. I have to say as well, look at the name on the bottom of your screen, Finn. I love the fact that we're going to have a JQ in the NBA pretty soon. It's been my nickname growing up. I'm loving it on every single podcast. It's like, oh, they're talking about me? No, they're talking about the guy that's going to earn multi-million dollars in the next year or two. But talk to me about him as a short role player, because I think if you are playing against LaMelo, against Con, against Brandon, you are probably going to try and push them into the paint. You are probably going to try and trap if you can. And if Quaintance isn't like the player always in the dunker, do you think that he can be someone that can create out of those short roll situations?
Yeah, so Arizona State last year was just like a really awful context for him offensively. He had like a
Mhm.
crazy amount of post up volume last year. Um, and that was it affected his percentages as a finisher. They were somewhat subpar for this archetype, and also it affected his assist to turnover ratio, like pretty, decently high turnover for a big. But in the short roll specifically, that was one of his better, like that was a strength offensively. And I think even for the people that were nitpicking, like his assist percentage was above 10, which is a mark I look for like just high field bigs. And I care a little bit less about the turnovers because of the play type distribution. I just wish he was playing more minutes because I think Kentucky would be actualizing him in the short roll more. So we'd have more of a sample to establish like this is a good short roll player. But even the priors back to like OTE, like he's always done this. Like he's always been
Mhm.
more high feel for this archetype. And I think just overall, like projecting the offense, like he has this weird integration of like high feel for his position, steals are like super high, and then also like he offensively he rebounds the hell out of the ball, so like he's going to get minutes early. He's going to have enough volume of like minutes early on that he'll get to shoot. He has never like not shot the ball. Like this has always been hack a JQ, but he's always had like 3-point volume as well, which is
Right.
just
He's always tried it.
right. It's uncharacteristic. And then like we have this sample of bigs recently, like a la Donovan Clingan and Zach Edey, who they just shoot. They just
Yeah.
decided to shoot, and it was because they had like some semblance of volume early, or were just allowed to shoot. So I would hope that like Charlotte would allow him to shoot some threes and like allow him to like play freely on offense because the product can't be too bad, even with the touch, because he has so many functional skills across the board.
And he looks like he's going to be a monster screen setter. He looks like he's a high motor player as well. So like I write for Celtics blog, and there's been a lot of talk about Luka Garza recently. As oh my god, there was a possession where Luka Garza screened 6 times the other night in like 10 seconds, and you can almost see that it looks like he's just throwing his ball around a bit like a bowling ball on a possession to possession basis. And if you are pairing that with sort of the lethal nature of that 3-point shooting trio on Charlotte, I think it could be like they're already one of the most fun teams to watch in the league. I love the idea, like in terms of a chain of play. Brandon or Lamelo with the ball in hand at the top of the key, Con coming to screen and like playing that short role, which he has been absolutely lethal in so far this year. And then you've got JQ and the dunker, and suddenly you have high level hoops back in Charlotte for the first time in a long, long time. So it was one of my favorite fits. Like I said, I originally had Caleb Wilson there. And I do hope that this is one that happens. It's almost going to be awkward if they land top 3, Charlotte, and let's say Boozer's gone. It's like, oh, we have to add another high volume offensive player to this mix. No, they are primed for a defensive specialist. So this was one of the more fun ones for me. Finn, anything to add on that, or would you like to move on to Utah and tell us who you've got going there?
We can go Utah. I
We're gonna match again here, aren't we?
I'm still not gonna pick AJ.
Oh, okay, go for it.
I think there's one fit below this that I like better, and it's gonna make some people upset, but hear me out. I am going to pick Tyler Tanner.
A player I messaged you about.
You did. And I was waiting to talk about him because AJ, for all of his strengths, and you said we'll get to this and we will.
Yeah.
Not the greatest defensive player, just outright.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big limiter of his. Now, am I going to pick like another subpar defensive player for Utah? Yes. I think positionally, it matters a lot less for Tanner to be an elite level defensive player in the NBA than it does for AJ. AJ will play primarily the 2 to the 4. and
Sure.
he is like a dominant paint scorer, so he fits the archetype of like a 4 in the NBA. The stocks against good teams, they don't necessarily like match up with like requisite NBA defenders. And Tanner is 5'11". We'll just call a spade a spade. He's very
I
short.
I saw today, I was doing a little bit of research for this, Adam Finkelstein, who I think I saw on Game Theory about a month and a half ago, had him at 5'11" without shoes, 5'11.75" in shoes before the season. So we have in the year of 2026, we have a sub 6 foot prospect in the prospective lottery here. But Finn, he's a player that I intended to talk about. So please carry on.
Yeah, and again, another like, oh my god, what are you doing? Functionally, this is how I'll do it. We're dealing with like the first percentile of height for a prospect. We're all aware of this.
Mm-hmm.
I am more worried about his weight being 170 than I am about his height, because functionally he is NBA player height. He is, as you mentioned, like Finkelstein reported, like 6'4", 6'5" wingspan.
Yes.
And we're waiting for confirmation on the testing. There's a world where he's 6'3" wingspan, then everything I'm saying right now is just invalid because that's not NBA player height, and there won't be any further discussion after that. Kemba Walker's standing reach was like 7'7", and he was objectively like a solid NBA player by most people's standards. I think Tanner plays 6'5", and the measurements aren't so bad, like Ty Lawson height, that we have to have like a doomsday scenario. Ty Lawson was like a top 40 offensive Rapom player for like 5 straight years. And he was better than Tanner offensively, but Tanner is way better defensively. Tanner blocks shots. Yeah, you go.
Can I bring a recent draftee in as a player that had a very similar physical build and, like, you know, bar an inch here, an inch there, particularly when you bring up the weight concerns? Like, Rob Dillingham got picked 8th in the draft in 2024. Another guy that, according to the data that I've got in front of me, weighed in at 164 pounds at the combine, and, you know, 6'1" with some sort of like 6'3" wingspan as well. So we are talking about the same measurements here, but like these players have been drafted in the lottery in recent years. So could continue to pitch, Tyler. Let's get on to the fun stuff here, because the stuff that I've been seeing in recent days on Twitter and a couple of articles and hear it on podcasts, it's I'll explain where I had him going, and I think it will make a lot of sense in a minute or two. But please carry on.
Yeah, like this is just Rob Dillingham height, and we're gonna have to live with that. But he's also functionally bigger than Rob Dillingham because he blocks shots like a 2 guard or a 3, and like he steals, like he's in the 99th percentile like steal percentage for guards, and he dunks the ball at like a super high volume, and, you know, to his credit, doesn't miss any dunks, which for shorter players is like a huge red flag. He's like 12 of 12 on the year. So I think what we're dealing with here is someone who is undersized, but is literally perfect everywhere else. There is like a small bit of the same thing that Fleming's had, where it's like low 3-point rate, low free throw rate, but he's been drawing fouls as of late. And then he's shooting 85% from the line currently. Like, that is the mark of the elite level shooters we have in the NBA. And he's shooting 70% at the rim. He's shooting good enough volume from 3 that I'm not as worried as I am with the Flemings. And there was a span last year before conference play. Tanner Tint didn't turn over the ball for like 3 weeks. Like, of all of the outlier short guards, he's at like a 3.5 assist turnover ratio. He is going to have so much possession value, because no matter, like, regardless of if he's a neutral defensively or like a bad defender, he's going to make the other team turn over the ball so much. And then his teams are never going to turn over the ball. And then, like, there's some questions about, like, can you have a subpar off the dribble creator at this height too? I wouldn't even say it's subpar in the non-Miles minutes. Like he is creating off the dribble at a higher level. His priors in AAU are amazing, and he will probably be third on most analytics models. Now I won't get there, but like I have AJ ahead of him, for example. But I
Yeah.
could get like reasonably high on Tanner because he is going to be a possession monster, and then he is an incredible shooter that we were not anticipating this leap. That's all it would take to be like a legitimate top 14 player, and we're here. So I just don't want to be too conservative with him just because of the height, and the height is obviously a big deal. But like,
can you speak to the fit in Utah specifically? What was it that drew Tanner to Utah for you?
I think for as good as Keontae has been this year, he might be a good like analog for what Tanner will be defensively. Utah has been way better offensively with Keontae on. Like they go from a 118 offensive rating to a 109 when he's off. Like he's a good offensive player. But Tanner has the potential to be a neutral defensively and then just maximize the hell out of like the possession battle. And if any team is going to have like the size infrastructure in place, it will be Utah. Their most successful units this year, and albeit in small like minutes, were Lowry, Filipowski, and Kessler. And that's 3 footers. And they've been good with in place of Walker, they'll have Nurkic there. Triple big is the way to go for them. And of all the teams support this, even if they're like somewhat subpar defensive units, I'm just such a believer in positional size. Having it all across the roster would be huge for his projection, I think.
Jamal Shed, another player that got drafted around these measurements while being built, you know, a bit like a Greek god. We'll park the weight conversation for a second. What role do you envision him playing on the defensive end on an NBA court? Are you able to have him? Bear in mind that we're like planning for 3 7-footers or even like 3 6'10 plus, because I don't think it's wrong, because I loved like looking at the data for those lineups earlier in the year before Kessler went out. It can even be, you know, Bailey, Filipowski, Markkanen, Kessler. Like you can put Ace in there. They've even got like Tyler Hendricks as another huge guy on the roster if he potentially like returns from injury. My one, like, not even pushback, but my one question would be, if you have 3 7-footers and then you have a 6-foot guard, can you envision a world where Tyler is asked to play at the point of attack, or do you have to hide him somewhere and then you sort of have to shoehorn in a point of attack defensive player to make your funky roster construction work?
I think you have to do the second. I think you have to have a POA, but I think he will be so good at limiting turnovers offensively that you almost have to try it and evolve the teams in the NBA to do so. Like it'll have to be him. It'll have to be someone that's so creative at maximizing someone who plays like a free safety defensively that like he did it with Chris Dunn, which Chris Dunn is like more of a true POA guy, but they had multiple defenders across the roster that did what Tanner will have to do to succeed, and they worked well.
And if you're playing like 3 7-footers as well, you're not necessarily going to play a zone, but you can have confidence that there's going to be someone under the rim that can contest a shot at any one time. And I remember looking at Dallas and discussing Dallas the year before last in Luka land, and they just traded for Clay, and I was having a debate with this guy, and it was like, I still think that they're going to be fine defensively because they're just massive. And if you want to just like reduce NBA defense down to its simplest terms, sometimes it's just the team that's going to have a tall guy under the rim the most amount of time. Like if your shortest guy, I know that this isn't the case with Tanner, but if your shortest guy is 6'7", or you have like 6'7" and up, and then like Kyrie Irving for the Mavs, for example, you're just always going to be in a position where there is going to be some level of contest at the rim. There's always going to be some sort of proficiency on the glass as well. So I do think that the sort of like perimeter defensive specialist can be a bit overrated these days. As fun as it is to watch Chris Dunn and as much of like an impact as Chris Dunn had, particularly like last year, and I suppose for the Jazz as well, like there are just other less flashy ways to achieve. And one thing that I'll bring up, like in defense of Tanner to Utah, is this idea that they have profiled as a super high turnover team in the last couple of years. They've thrown the ball away endlessly, almost in pursuit of like lottery picks. If you pair some of the mad scientists, like really forward thinking stuff that Will Hardy is doing, with the movement shooting at size, but you have, I almost view it as like Mike Conley, like immediately after the Donovan Mitchell trade. They were still really good because they had Mike Conley not giving the ball away and they had a fun offense. If you have someone that can just make sure that possessions get a shot up, then you could have something that's really, really fun, and it's a different way to succeed. So I really, really like that pick. However, I will place, in fact, I'm not even going to say place. I'm going to tell AJ Debantzer that he doesn't even have to move his stuff. He's playing for BYU at the moment. He's just going to go straight down to the Jazz practice facility. I think it's Kevin Young that owns both, which is a little sketchy. I almost wonder, like, are they promised the top 3 pick just so they get one of Boozer or AJ, who both have ties to Utah? Like, AJ for me is the player that I absolutely want to see in Utah. He's the one that I like struggle to place of the big 3 because it does feel more like fit around AJ than vice versa. And you could have done that in a multitude of places. And I was very, very close to having him go to Brooklyn. And it's for the exact same exact same reasons. I always wonder with coaches like Jordi Fernandez, like Will Hardy, whether they play their offensive systems because they want to or because they have to. So if you give, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, Finn, if you give Will Hardy or Jordi Fernandez a number 1 offensive primary that can create for himself at a high level without turning the ball over, 1, will the offensive system just change? Or 2, and this is the more interesting thing for me, can you build that movement, particularly on like the opposite side to the isolation, around AJ isolating from a corner, AJ isolating from the top? And then, you're not watching James Harden ball, you're not watching some like Jason Tatum ball from the Celtics from a couple of years ago. You're watching dynamic isolation where perhaps you're making the playmaking reads easier for AJ. You're keeping the turnovers low because he can create without really passing the ball, and you're surrounding him with size. I think that this is the most fun fit for me because you've got the optionality in the front court with Kessler. You can almost go 5 out with Filipowski and Markkanen. You can pair both him and Bailey on the wings and have 2 guys that are really large and athletic coming off movement. You can have the ball rotating, and I think that Keontae is someone that can modulate up and down as an on-ball and off-ball player because he is a proficient shooter. So AJ for me was the most fun fit in Utah, and like it's the name of this, it's the idea of this podcast. It's where I see Debantzer being maximized. It's where I see us getting the best version of himself. And I haven't watched enough to have a take on who's 1, 2, 3. I get that the statistical argument would say like, oh, it should be Cam, it should be Darren, but it's hard to resist AJ Debantzer. It really is when you keep seeing the tape. Have you seen that clip from today that's gone round of the insane, like, it's not quite a travel, 10-foot hop step?
Yeah. Where he like hop steps into another one too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to do mixtape analysis, but it's superstar stuff. It's and then it's also 66% true shooting on nearly 25 points per game as a freshman in college. Can you give me your AJ spiel, please?
Yeah, so should I spoil the next one just for the sake of time? So
Yeah, why don't we move on to it? Yeah.
I have AJ for OKC. The
Oh.
high end, I know it's a bit, I don't want to think about that right now. It's the high end is he's like the best self creator in the NBA. a la like Zion Williamson a little bit, just like more
Yep.
perimeter oriented. Like I can't remember who said this to me. Maybe it was Niall on our pod, but I think the comp for AJ is Zion in the NBA like right now.
Right.
Kind of a
Can I give you?
subpar.
Can I
Yeah.
give you like big DeMar DeRozan?
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
Right.
like
Like put Toronto athleticism DeMar
yeah,
with the sort of style of game now. But you're right. Like Zion is another analog for AJ. Carry on.
yeah. DeMar's a perfect comp. Like DeMar was someone I think I was gonna write an AJ article, but then I decided to have school and like break to enjoy. But that was the comp I made for him as well. The like the real downside with AJ is that the defense against good teams is subpar, and the finishing, and AJ like on tape is the most impressive slasher I think I've ever seen. Like he's
Yeah.
so graceful in the air, and like, but just the raw percentages against top 100 teams, it's been a bit it's been a bit like bleak, to be honest, for that archetype. Like I think he's still shooting like sub 60% at the rim, which isn't horrible, but for that to be like your main offensive vision, like that's sort of like it's not the greatest, to be fair. And you couple that with the like sheer lack of 3-point volume, and it gets worse against top 100 teams or whatever.
Right.
It's just a bit jarring, to be fair. And so I think AJ on the top end is like the best offensive player in the draft, bar none. He's going to touch paint more than anybody.
Yep.
He is going to dunk. Like the dunk rates for him just in a vacuum are just absurd. They're outlier, like self-created dunks. He's probably going to lead whatever, like whatever you want to put together, like career self-created dunks. It's going to be him and Zion. And that's the end of the conversation. But you're mixing like subpar 3-point volume, subpar turnover creation, and just middle of the road playmaking. I don't even think it's that bad. I think people dock him too much for that, to be honest.
Yep.
But the impact metrics are not going to support that sort of player. Like impact metrics overall, like you can think of them what you will. Like they were lower on DeMar. They're lower on like a Jaylen Brown because they offer that same sort of mix. I think with AJ, his stock rates against like all teams are too good to just like poo-poo them and put them to the side. He is going to be like a solid NBA defender. With OKC, they're the best turnover creation team ever. And you're putting AJ, who is a self-creation monster, alongside Shea, who kind of needs that help offensively.
Right. Okay.
Like, you're going to have the best paint creation team in the league, like bar none. You have all the ancillary skill sets. Yeah, like of all time. Like, you're going to have the best self-creation offensive team in the league. You'll have the best defensive team in the league, even still, because AJ is not horrible. Like, and then you have Chet, who spaces the floor. You have Hartenstein, who plays out of the high post. Like, you see lobs with AJ. Like, there is so much catch radius there for you to play with Hartenstein. So, like, this is the fit. This is the best fit for AJ, and this team would win the championship every year, probably.
Yeah, that would. They'd need to do another CBA again, wouldn't they? They'd need to do a guys. We thought that we would 2K style do a fancy draft, so every team gets to select all their players again. We've decided to reset. OKC has got a special NBA trophy, but this is not good for the product. But yeah, that would be insane. Could I just can I bring up VJ as like an interesting comp in terms of the rim finishing for AJ, because VJ had like these similar concerns whilst also like throwing down thunderous dunks last year. He's at 59%, so very similar to AJ now, but 59% for Philly this season. Do you think? I think VJ's rim percentage was lower in college. Just like off the top of my head, you might have something contrary to that in front of you, but like, do you think that in an NBA context you can see that rim percentage going up? Is it like a pace of play with AJ? Because like you said on the highlights, he's the most impressive slasher we've seen. It doesn't seem to be any issue with pacing. It seems to be like a very, very mature game. What is it that's leading to that? What is it that's leading to that disconnect between like the athleticism and the skill and the percentage around the rim?
Yeah, I think the overall problem with BJ was that one, he couldn't dribble and he couldn't finish. So like his non-dunk 2 percentage was like awful. And
Mhm.
AJ is not going to have that problem. Like he has not necessarily better shooting projection, but just better touch by the rim. VJ is at like 46.5% from two. That's like the ninth percentile amongst guards. And against top 100 teams, he was shooting like 54%. He shot 48 overall from percent from two. And AJ won't have that problem. AJ is just in a different echelon of like usage against good teams, the responsibility he has. Like he has a good point guard. Like Wright is a good college point guard, I think. But yeah, I don't think it's the same tier. I think the overall sample also looked pretty subpar for VJ. The overall sample for AJ is going to be elite. He's going to have too many dunks, like too self-created. He's just going to be.
The
He's an
getting to the
incredible.
line as well.
Yeah.
It's
Foul
just
drawing.
it's mental. If he got to OKC, you're right. Like let's all go watch tennis for 10 years. We can sim to the end of the season every year. It's like a 6 rings of steel 82-0 challenge. The guy that I had going to OKC is someone that we've already spoken about, so we can gloss over. It is the role player version of getting AJ and that perfect fit, and that was Yaxel Lenderberg for me. Just in terms of like where you look at OKC as a team that needs good players on value contracts, they will have no issue going and drafting a guy that's going to nearly be 24 on draft night if they get him under cost control. If they can then, explore options with Isaiah Hartenstein, and maybe you've got iHeart, or maybe you're just running Chet Holmgren, Yax, and Jalen Williams, J Will, not J Dub, as your front court, and you're just set. And I would like to see OKC try and find a way to put a little more like spacing in there. And I think that you could argue that Yax would do that if he were playing the 4, and then you can slide Chet to the 5 and still maintain that double big look. He's a player that, like we said before, like will have to be respected in closeout situations. He's got that wingspan profile that OKC loves as well. So this is a real hand in glove fit for me in terms of both like play style and timeline and contract. I just think that it would work incredibly well.
This is another pack it up for me. This is another like new CPA situation.
Really? So it's AJ or Yax, and we've just got to reset. Fair enough. Let's move to Dallas. Finn, I wanted to get Cooper Flag a point guard in the long term. I was sort of choosing between Tanner and Flemings and who would be the best fit. And I just decided to lean into the white guy vibe. I put Bennett Sturts in there as someone that can like maybe allow Cooper Flag to operate a little bit more off ball, to operate in off screen action, get the ball in sort of like high post elbow situations instead of having to drive there, as well as being a player who this year has shown that he doesn't have to have the ball in hand every single possession. Like his usage has gone down from was it Drake last year?
Yeah.
His college, his usage has gone down from Drake. So I just thought that was one that made sense. A high level playmaker that doesn't turn the ball over, that can shoot, has like a lot of tape of being able to shoot, and would be playing in a land of the Giants where it doesn't necessarily matter that he's not like God's greatest gift at the point of attack.
Yeah, I had the same name.
There you go.
Yeah.
Anything to share on stats, or should we just get straight into our final pick, which is Memphis? Interestingly enough, another one that's been linked to trading their point guard.
Yeah, that's wild. Only thing I'll add on Sturts is there's no better way to get Flag in like a more optimal situation than adding like a high volume handler that can shoot threes. Like he needs it badly.
Especially one that like has been used to almost running the playbook, used to being the coach on the floor a little bit as well. So you can just choreograph like, Jason Kidd can go in and go, Bennett, I want Cooper to catch the ball in this spot tonight. Can you do that? yeah, Jason, I can do it. It's fine. And then I'll go in space and then it's all going to work. So I think that would be something that would be really fun. So we're at Memphis, and I'll tell you, this was my Tyler Tanner team. And it's for the very simple reason that they're potentially looking to move on from Jar. But when you look at Cedric Coward, when you look at Desmond Bain, when you look at Zach Edey, Memphis, more than any team in the NBA, has been the team to lean into statistical profile funky players. Cedric Coward is not a funky player, but the other three are. And, I just think that they would say, screw it. We know what we can see on the stat sheet. We know what we can see on film. This is our guy that we want to roll with. And I just really respect an organization that just respects production. And it's also like, could you imagine super low turnover offense going into Zach Edey post ups?
Yeah, I was about to say that'd break basketball, I think.
See, who did you have going to Memphis?
I had Ngongba here.
Nice.
It was a toss up between him and Steinbach. The issue is, in the past, Memphis has been like pretty elite defensively, and this year they've just kind of been subpar. One, because Edey hasn't played, and two, because like Jaren's kind of had a misstep. But like I think over their past few games or something like that, like
his block rate has picked up massively. His block and stop rate has picked up, whereas he had like a 10-game spell prior where it's like, what is this? This is Jaren cooked, but he seems to be well and truly back there.
Yeah, like he's back on the radar, and then like they're having some 3-point shooting. Like I'd expect that defensive rating to rise up a good bit. I wanted to go Steinbach because he's a weird mold that I think would fit in between like Jaren, Edey. Like that front court would kind of work the same that it did with Brendan Clark, where
sure,
you get a high-level rebounder in the room next to Edey, and you just dominate the glass in the non-Jaren minutes and just make the offense work. But I think Ngongba was like too good of an opportunity to pass up, being that like that is another situation like the Hornets situation where you just have 48 minutes of like very, very, very good center play. And
yeah.
I can promise myself a competent defense with Ngongba on the floor. I can't do the same with Steinbach, I don't think.
He was the one that confused me when you sent him over. Like not a critique of the board or anything, but then like going and watching the film, it's not a game that like very easily ports to the NBA, because like you said, it's like it's not dominant rim finishing. It's a lot of I'm going to roll you from 5 feet out and finish with this nice sort of like flip shot around the basket. So it is quite like an unorthodox style. But who am I to critique that when I'm saying that Memphis is the ultimate production team? They may look at that and they may go, we've got all the room for that in the world. Come on down.
Yeah.
Yeah, Finn, I think we're there. I think we've already solved the NBA draft in Jan.
True.
It's all sorted. These would be wonderful picks. I'll message you on draft night. We'll see how many of these we got right. But unless you've got any final thoughts, there you go. That is our full draft. Let's recap where we have players. I'll list the team. You tell me who you had going there. So Indiana.
I had Boozer.
Nice. I had Pat Ngongba going to Indiana. We both had Darren Peterson going to the Hawks. Who did you have going to Sacramento?
I had Caleb Wilson.
Absolutely same here. I had Cam Boozer ending up on Washington, finally getting that number one option, having just traded for one. Who did you have going to the Wizards?
I had Darren. No, who did I have?
You had Yax, didn't you?
Yeah, right. I had Yax Lindenberg to Washington.
I believe we both had Kingston Flemings going to the Brooklyn Nets. Then we both had JQ, Jaden Quaintance. Love that there's going to be a JQ going to the Hornets, absolutely molding together that elite sort of semi-3 guard lineup. I had AJ DeBancer going to Utah. You had Tyler Tanner. Then after that, our 8th team was OKC. That's where things got really frisky. That's the bit that I might upload to YouTube and get a load of hate for. I had Yaxel Lenderberg there. You had AJ DeBancer. Let's just cross our fingers. Like, please don't let this be the one timeline. Doctor Strange meme. And then in 9th and 10th, we both had Bennett Sturts going to Dallas. And finally for Memphis, whereas I picked Patton Gomber first, you had him going as the penultimate player in the draft, while I had Tyler Tanner going and becoming a fictional Memphis Grizzly. Finn, thank you so much for coming on today, man. I don't know about you, but I've had an absolute blast. Please plug what you have to plug. Go for it.
I mean, I've got nothing to say. Shout out to you for allowing me to be on. The show's great. I really appreciate it. And go follow the double bonus as well. We do a lot of these challenges over there. And yeah, just again, shout out to Jack. This is an incredible opportunity. Thank you.
You don't know how many listeners I have, Finn. This is a fun chat. I don't know if it's an incredible opportunity, but thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been a really fun one to record. I'll make sure that we get this out nice and soon. If you like this podcast, go and check out the double bonus. It is a podcast I listen to. It's a podcast that is entering the rotation as we speak. You know, over the last couple of years, Finn has got a great mind for the draft. He's getting some great guests on there as well. So as draft season really starts to ramp up, make sure you go and check that out. Keep it locked on the Drop Step over the next couple of weeks. Got a couple more draft-centric episodes coming. But, you know, the NBA is coming. The trade deadline is coming. We're going to be able to do some real grotty, sloppy episodes as we approach February 6th. So it's all fun on the Drop Step. Thank you for listening all the way through. Like, rate, subscribe, check the links below, and have a lovely rest of your day.